Welcome to Taking the Myth, your topical skeptical discussion show. I'm Stephen Knight, and joining me is Iram Ramzan. Iram, how are you doing?
I'm alright. I'm recording this from up north.
Up north, you're back in the homeland.
Got to keep it real.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just Iram from the block.
Right, well, where do we start? It might be worth mentioning our interview with Nicky Campbell the other week. For those of you who missed it, shame on you, first of all, but we actually recorded a video interview with the great Nicky Campbell. You can find that over on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/gspellchecker. Spoke to him for ages, very open, very generous with his time. You were great. What do you think? What are your thoughts? What's your debrief?
It was good, wasn't it? I think it was good to hear his views on recording the big questions over the years, and just what his own personal views are, what he's actually interested in. And he's really into science and philosophy as well, isn't he? He's really, really candid about just what his own views are about God and whether he thinks he actually exists. And we managed to pin him down on no answer. Mo answer.
Yeah, you came straight out with the Mo Ansar question for any of our long-time listeners who wants to check in on the world of Mo Ansar. That's the episode for you. But I think the word candid spot on, because I know that Nicky's opinionated. He has his own views. Obviously, he's very smart. But years of being on the BBC and having to be balanced, I was very surprised at how just open he was. Very personable. Said exactly, didn't sit on the fence on issues. Told us exactly what he thought about things, whilst maintaining sort of civility and professionalism. There's an amazing soundbite in there. You should seek it out. Nicky talking about heaven and various questions he has on the subject was absolutely hilarious. That was a treat. I think I can retire on that, to be honest, and be happy.
I think that's it. I think we're pretty much ready for our Emmy now, or whatever other type of award. Yeah.
Season finale with Nicky Campbell. Well, something we spoke about a couple of months ago on the show was the brouhaha surrounding the shooter from Plymouth, rightly so, because it was a mass shooting. I think 5 people were killed. However, what was really seemingly irresponsible at the time to me, and certainly to you, was this idea that this shooter in Plymouth was somehow motivated by Incel ideology, as though it was a misogynistic terror attack. Lots of commentators ran with that. Lots of newspapers printed it. Talking heads, social media erupted about the problem of misogyny. Women were told they're not safe. It's an attack on women in general. And a few weeks down the line, it's reported by the chief of Counter-extremism, I believe, that it was not a terror attack, that it was not linked to Incel ideology. Now, that was pretty much clear to everyone who wasn't wading in with a stick of bias. So how do you feel about this now that it's sort of been officially confirmed that it is nothing to do with ideology? I suppose the question is, how irresponsible are people who push false narratives during mass murders?
Well, what does the chief of terror know, Stephen? But yes, no, I think a lot of people are very. I think it's also to do with your own agenda as well, really, because every time there's a shooting by a white man, you get the usual people online who say, "Oh, look, he's white. Of course, it's not terrorism."
Get so excited,
that label
don't they? Oh, we got a honky. We got a honky.
People, it's only brown people can be terrorists, and we know that's not true. But, that doesn't stop everyone. It's pretty obvious this guy wasn't wedded to a particular ideology, and that's what makes it a terror attack. Nobody was saying that it wasn't a horrible incident, but, it has to meet a certain threshold in order for it to be classed as a terrorist attack. If the chief of terror is saying, incel in and of itself...
Just to clarify, probably the chief of anti-terror.
Okay.
I am the chief of terror.
Okay, I think people know what we mean, but yes, good shout. But yes, I think
worst Batman villain ever.
Incel in and of itself isn't a terrorist ideology. And, you know, as he said as well, you have to cross a threshold in terms of your actions and your intentions. And, you know, terrorism is all about this wider movement and a particular goal, which this man clearly didn't really have. But it doesn't make the incident any less sad and tragic, of course.
I think you're absolutely spot on there. I think, but what seriously interests me about this in terms of how people respond is we all have our biases, we all have our suspicions. For instance, I'm very tuned in to the issue of Islamism, but then I also see people whenever there's a reported that a car's gone into a crowd or there's been a stabbing, without any information whatsoever, people will jump on that. Oh, it's the Muslims again. Oh, you know, why aren't they reporting the colour of his skin? So that's the flip side of it. They're like the sort of right-wing version of these far-left people screaming about incels. So I don't think I'm particularly special, but my instinct whenever something like this happens is just wait on the facts. You can be just as right later when you have the evidence in your hand. I don't understand why people need to insert their own agendas immediately. It's the internet, isn't it? We have to tell everybody what we are thinking all the time, every second. Nobody can just wait 5 minutes and get all the pieces in front of them before sort of making their move, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, is it really going to hurt people just to hang back a little bit and just wait until all the evidence is in? I mean, you know, sometimes when these incidents happen, your natural inclination might be, oh my God, yeah, it's a Muslim terrorist attack. And sometimes it does, most of the time actually, it does prove to be correct. Fine. But there's nothing wrong with holding back and just waiting until we get more details. You know, it's like with the David Amess killing, which we'll come on to later. You know, a lot of people were very, very very quick to want a commentary straight after it happened. I thought, you know, the man has just died. Can we just, you know, hit pause for a second here and wait until more details emerge?
Yeah, that would be the wise thing, wouldn't it? I mean, it might be worth mentioning as well, just in terms of how quick the news cycle moves on these events. I bet nobody listening can remember the crossbow terrorist attack the other week. I think that's just fell out of the news cycle, hasn't it? Because we're either numb to these things now, or bad stuff happens in such quick frequency in terms of Islamism now that we just sort of forget and move on to the next thing. I don't know if it's worth talking about that a little bit. I mean, I have to admit, I've even forgotten about it. So I think this happened, I think it was just last week, actually. There was a bow. I mean, it was this month. It's not like it's not like it was. It was this month. 5 people killed with a bow and arrow in Norway, shooting at people, described as a random 30-minute bloodbath in the press. So I mean, that's that. I mean, I think Europe's just become numb to this kind of thing, and I suppose what I want to mention, and this brings us back to David Amess, is that the narratives or the focus switches very quickly depending on the motivating ideology. So we thought this Plymouth shooter, the chattering class in the media were pushing this idea it was incel terrorism, and that's all they spoke about. Ideology, in other words, misogyny, for instance, inceldom, or however you want to term. That's all they spoke about. They could suddenly make the leap between bad ideas and bad behaviour, which is what most people talk about when they're trying to make a point about Islamism. Now, we find out that David Amess, this is an MP, Tory MP, Southend, so obviously we have to be careful what we say, but it appears, and it's been stated, that it's a suspected Islamist terrorist attack. Now, the conversation, is it just me, or is it insane in terms of what the solutions proposed have been? Absolutely nobody in any like government position or in the news media of any stature is talking about ideology anymore. It's like, oh, it's Islamism. Well, let's forget ideology and let's talk about mean tweets. What's your take?
Exactly. So, you know, they said David Amess killed just earlier this month, and at the time of recording, just over a week ago. And the man who's now been charged is a 25-year-old Somali young lad called Ali Harbi Ali. And since that happened, certain details came out, like the fact that he'd been referred to the government's Prevent programme while he was still at college. And in the immediate aftermath, I get on the first day, you don't know what's happened, fair enough. You just want to give out condolences, express shock. But the debate seems to be focused rather bizarrely on online anonymity or social media, as though this was a random troll who had killed Sir Davis. Now, I remember in the aftermath of Labour MP Joe Cox's killing in 2016, and it was by a white far-right man. People were very, very quick to condemn the far right and racism and how toxic the Brexit debate had become. And this was all because of Brexit. Basically, Brexit had caused this.
Ideology was the main focus again, wasn't it?
It was. Nobody was shy in talking about it, and I think it's because, as a society, we know what to talk about or what to say when a far right maniac goes on a murder spree, or when we're dealing with a racist nutter, we know immediately how to shut them down. We're very comfortable in confronting them, but when it comes to anything to do with Islamist radicalization or extremism, as we saw last week, we're still really clueless. And Andrew Marr, BBC presenter on his show, spent an entire morning talking about people remaining anonymous on Twitter and Facebook, when there's no evidence at all that David Amess's murder was to do with anonymity, either online or off. Obviously, I think our politicians do get a lot of abuse, and I'm sure a lot of them will be worried about what could happen if that abuse goes to the next level. I don't blame them. You see this often enough when they're out in the street. Sometimes they're accosted by a bunch of nutters, as Michael Gove was, a Conservative minister. He was hounded by some anti-vaxxers.
That was deeply unpleasant.
No, it was, because someone like Michael Gove, he's not going to know if the people protesting are violent at all. All he knows is that he's on his way to his office and he's just confronted by a bunch of screaming people. Any one of them could have done something to him. So I think there is a debate to be had about the level of abuse our politicians get, but that had absolutely nothing to do with Sir David's death. A lot of people were talking about Angela Rayner and her comments about Tory scum, but
she's not responsible. As much as I dislike her and I disagree with them, you can't point the finger at her. I understand there's a lot of political point scoring going on, but I don't think this Islamist that stormed the church heard Angela Rayner go, Tories are scum, and jumped on that.
I get that we can't speculate too much because, someone's been arrested and charged, there's going to be a trial, and, his defence team will argue that he needs to have a fair trial, and, all this speculation will harm a fair defence. I get that, but that didn't stop all the speculation about Joe Cox's killing. Nobody was bothered about an unfair trial of anything. This always happens every time there's an Islamist tag. I mean, Douglas Murray was talking about it on TV and wrote a piece about it where he was talking about, I think it was Khairi Sadallah, who I think he murdered those 3 gay men. It was only last year as well.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. I forgot about that as well.
There you go. We forget about these things. We forget there was another attack.
In a park targeting gay men, which is just sort of completely swept under the carpet.
And after that, I remember the debate being focused about, we need to come together and we need to be kinder to one another. Yeah, I get it. We need to be kinder, blah, blah, blah. But again, it has nothing. It does nothing about the killing. It doesn't even go into the motives. I don't know what it is about this country, but we don't really seem to, want to get down into the details. We seem to think that the problem will just go away, and it doesn't. How many terrorist attacks have we had since July 5? And okay, fine, they haven't, some of them haven't been on as wide a scale as the one in 2005, and that might be to the credit of our security services who have managed to prevent it from being a lot worse than it could have been. But the fact is, people out there are still wedded to this ideology and extremism. And all we want to talk about is, let's be kind, and we need to do something about Twitter trolls.
I mean, they're talking as though a tweet stormed a church and hashtagged an MP to death. And there's something very selfish in this from MPs to me, because, okay, the target of this terror attack was an MP. Now, I agree that MPs are at higher risk of being targeted. For sure, and they have unique security concerns and they should be able to do their job safely. Also, the predominant victims of terror attacks in this country are civilians. It's not politicians. Now, the politicians have seen the killing of an MP at the hands of an alleged terrorist, and they've somehow managed to make it about them getting online abuse and wishing to combat that. So they proposed the online harms bill. They've been trying to pass this through for a while, and this is just to go on top of the really strong, speech laws we have in the UK, what you can and can't post online. Record numbers of people are being, visited from the police or questioned over tweets in this country. It's absolutely laughable. Now, I mean, this is an awkward thing, but I think it's important to mention. I think there's a big difference to be made between death threats, which are terrible and unacceptable, and credible death threats. Now, I would submit that even if you banned the internet in totality, let alone social media, it would have done nothing to prevent the murder of Joe Cox. It would have done nothing to prevent the killing of David Amess, any other terror attack in the country. It's very rare that a murderer or a terrorist sends threats to their intended target beforehand on Twitter before they do the deed. I can't see how they've made the link between Twitter threats and terrorism. And I don't know if you saw Conservative MP Mark Francois. He proposed in Parliament something called David's Law. Yeah. And that's already an appeal to emotion. We're going to name some new legislation after this innocent MP who's been killed, David Amess. So that's already a little politician's trick as far as I'm concerned. And all he was, this is what blew my mind. I nearly shit when I heard this, Iram. So he's in Parliament talking up the dangers of abusive and violent rhetoric online. Then in the next few sentences, he talks about his desire to drag Mark Zuckerberg kicking and screaming to justice, to be held responsible, brought to the bar. So he's talking about forcibly dragging somebody against their will, a violent act, whilst condemning violent rhetoric. Now, I don't know if you read the other day, like the day after David Amess was killed, or a couple of days after, there was a man arrested in the UK for sending a death threat online. Now, I've not seen the death threat, but he sent it to a politician on Twitter. I've not seen it. I don't know its content. I don't know its context. I condemn it totality. Have a guess how old this man was? He was 76-year-old, this man, who sent a death threat on Twitter to an MP. Now, what are the chances this 76-year-old man, has actually got murderous intent, and this politician was in any danger because of this stupid tweet, which I condemn. It's legal. It shouldn't happen. Now, what holds more influence, do you think? An MP on the floor in British Parliament talking about dragging people, kicking and screaming that he doesn't like, or some 76-year-old man sending a tweet to a Welsh MP and being arrested for it? This is how backwards it is. We none of this, absolutely none of this whatsoever, will stop the next MP from being murdered by an Islamist.
No, I mean the whole thing is ludicrous because the Labour MP, Stephen Timms. I don't know if you remember this.
He got stabbed.
Case. Yeah, he was stabbed in 2010 while he was holding a constituency surgery by Roshana Chowdhury. And she was an extremist. She was inspired by Anwar al-Awlaki.
Yeah, everybody is. Like, you can always trace it back to that man. It's very influential.
Yeah. So, again, this was an MP very much like David Amess. He was holding a surgery for his constituents as she came in and she stabbed him. So you're right. I don't see how that had any link to Twitter.
Do we know if she sent him any mean tweets beforehand?
I may have to look that up. But, I mean, I don't think anyone would be stupid enough to send a tweet before actually going out to kill someone. That would make it a lot easier for the police, obviously. But, I mean, God, that man was very, very lucky not to have been killed after she stabbed him.
What the fuck is going on? Why is this Mark Zuckerberg's fault?
Because I guess it's easier to target something like Facebook or Twitter and mean tweets. It's easy to say, oh, we must say nice things about each other online, rather than confront the reality of extreme ideology. Nobody wants to sort of touch that with a barge pole now for some odd reason. I don't know about you, but I've just been absolutely fed up and frustrated with the level of debate that we've had since Sir David's death. I think it's an insult.
Yeah.
To him. I think it's an insult to his life and his death that we're not even discussing the reason why he could have been killed, and we're just talking about online trolls and suggesting a David's Law when we don't even know if he would have even wanted that in the first place. He can't speak now in favour or against it. We're just going to pass through a law without even discussing it properly. I think, do you know what it is? I think this is perhaps a sign that the government feels like it's out of control because of all these things that are happening right now, and they feel like they need to do something. And so this is a really good time to pass some very dubious laws in order to be seen to be doing something. And in fact, it's actually not doing anything. It's making them look even more fucking incompetent than they already are. Felt good to get off my chest.
So poorly thought out. I mean, I have been furious with it, and it's so short-sighted as well. I mean, 2 quick points here. So first of all, they're cracking down on the idea of anonymity. They want to prevent, well, there's 2 solutions. That they want to either prevent somebody from being anonymous on social media, or 2, they want to allow anonymity, but that person has to register their ID and details behind the scenes, so the social media companies can confirm who they are, for instance. Now, the first problem I have with banning anonymity is how short-sighted it is. So we've got people who are like ex-Muslims who, for their own safety, can't display their face or name. You have whistleblowers, you have political dissidents, you have people living under authoritarian regimes, and do you just want to, deal them out? Can they no longer be part of the conversation? Can they no longer contribute to our understanding and knowledge? I think that's ridiculous. Second one, holding everyone's details online. That's just asking for a data breach. A data breach of, we see one every couple of weeks somewhere. Some company has had data stolen, or not even stolen by somebody competent. They've just left it somewhere or done something stupid with it. So all of a sudden, all these authoritarian regimes, or really, hardcore anti-free speech states can get access to this if necessary. It's just really, really silly. I don't think they'll try and put that through. I think they'll realise how stupid it is to say that no one can be anonymous online. And again, not that that's got anything whatsoever to do with the killing of David Amess. I keep having to say it in my head. I don't know what's going on. It's like having a debate about knives on the streets of London and somebody saying we're going to ban ice cream and everybody debating banning ice cream. That's how it feels to me. It is absurd. And I think the NSS did a write-up on this, but the entire discussion about the solutions to this, the word Islam was only mentioned once, and it was mentioned in the context of Islamophobia.
Yeah, I saw that. And I think another point that was raised throughout this was on, the Prevent program, because this Ali man who has been charged, he'd been referred to it while he was still at college. And because he went on to commit this attack, allegedly, everyone's asking, is Prevent fit for purpose? Why was he able to carry out this attack when he was known to the authorities before? And that does happen in a few cases. We do see someone who say been referred to Prevent once and then they go on to commit an attack. But I think it does need to be pointed out that, he was referred to Prevent while he was still in college or school, when, you're under someone's care, you're still a child really, and you're going to be covered by all these statutory agencies, so you will be flagged up on the system. Whereas once you're an adult, you've left education, you're not really on the system anymore, so who's going to be keeping an eye out on what you're doing? Whereas if you're in school and college, it's much easier for different agencies to keep an eye on what you're doing, to be able to offer support if there's anything going on with you. But the other point I wanted to make about Prevent was, and a few people have been saying this, and I've heard this from so many different sources now, is that it was supposed to be set up to tackle Islamist extremism, because that was and remains the biggest threat right now. And it's sort of got lost a bit in a way. I don't know if you feel the same way, but because it sort of expanded its remit slightly, so it focuses on far right terrorism or extremism, and there's a lot that I've seen a few news reports where it's claimed that far right referrals are growing, they're increasing, they're outnumbering the Islamist ones. But what people don't really seem to realize is that I think anecdotally anyway, like the threshold for referrals for far right extremism, it is much lower than it is for Islamist extremism, because as we were saying earlier, people feel more comfortable in identifying or confronting racism or white supremacy, for example. If someone in class started talking about Anders Breivik, or if they started talking about Tommy Robinson, they'll be very, very quick to shut down that debate. Whereas if they started talking about religion, Islam, or Islamist extremism, and because our schools are already full of people who are a bit more liberal, left-wing, they feel slightly more uncomfortable because they'll be accused of being racist or Islamophobic. And that's maybe where Prevent has lost its way. It's still not tackling Islamist extremism properly, because maybe there aren't enough experts in counter-extremism, and maybe people don't stay in the job long enough to develop that expertise. I don't know if you agree with that, but that's certainly what I believe and what I've been hearing from a lot of other people.
Yeah, I mean, there are a few issues there, I suppose. I mean, the first one, when you see these headlines about, far-right referrals or terrorist attacks are up like 60% over, and it's like they put this figure out there, and what they've done is they've just doubled from like 1 to 2, and then they put a percentage on it, and they don't put it into context. The overwhelming majority of people in prison for terrorist offences, people being, convicted, charged for terrorist offences are of the Islamist slant. The people most likely, the most people being watched or the most terror attacks foiled are Islamist. It's a disproportionate, if you compare the amount of Muslims in this country versus how much they're represented in potential or actual terrorist attacks, they're overrepresented. Now, that's not to say there isn't an issue with the far right. I'm seeing more convictions on the far right in recent years, and I'm not talking about posting something mean. I'm talking about trying to, make bombs. I'm talking about actually making plans to kill people. I saw a couple of stories just this week, actually. So the counter-terrorism are doing their job there in getting these dangerous people locked up, which is fine. The thing about Prevent is, in general, it's a double-edged sword, because obviously it's run by people. We are not an all-seeing eye of all people all the time. Now imagine a scenario where we could be. So let's have a look at this suspect in the David Amess case. Now, how could we have prevented this? Well, how about 24-hour surveillance on the man? Or, seeing where he worships and investigating there. All these things you could do that would cost money, but you could do them, would instantly, by anyone on the left, be decried as Islamophobic or targeting Muslims. So the things that you could do to prevent these people from carrying out acts of terrorism, or certainly get closer to prevention, you wouldn't be able to do, because nobody would be for it. However, now it's in the headlines that this man was referred to Prevent. All the same people are saying, why didn't you stop him? Why? How is it he's
what are your
got
solutions
off your radar?
then? What do they propose we do? Become like a police state and follow these people 24/7? That requires a lot of manpower. All you can do with some of these people is monitor them very, very closely. And like I said, maybe that's why the attacks haven't been as horrific. Like a lot of these attacks, like London Bridge, Westminster, they could have been a lot more horrific than they were. Maybe that's why they weren't, because they were surveilled. But the thing is, some of these people are saying, "Oh, we don't want to turn into a police state." These are the same people who probably are the ones who call for big COVID restrictions or want vaccine passes and passports. So you think, well, if you're all for surveillance when it comes to that, why do you not want surveillance when it comes to extremist nutters who want to kill us all? Can't have it both ways. And also, if you don't want to live in a police state, you have to accept that you can't, you can't. That's the only way we have to prevent any single attack, is to become a police state, which we're obviously not going to become. We will get, unfortunately, some attacks. The best thing I suppose we can do is to minimize them as much as possible and keep an eye out on any people who are deemed suspicious. And again, to talk very candidly about the Islamist ideology. And we're still scared of talking about it. It's been 16 years since July 7 bombings, and I don't know about you, but I feel like nobody really wants to. It's like people are so not just scared but bored of talking about this now. They don't even want to talk about this anymore. Even when there has been another terrorist attack, I noticed that we might talk about it for 2-3 days, and that's it. Nobody really wants to talk about it anymore. It just doesn't seem like there's any willingness to combat this.
Yeah, I was really naive on this point. I just thought it'll take a little time for everyone else to catch up and get on the same page. It'll take a little bit more time, and everyone will start coming round and approaching the topic with a little bit more confidence. But no, it's just everyone wants to get as far away from that as possible, and that's why we're talking about online abuse and death threats. I mean, first thing to mention as well on this is, if the government pass very restrictive legislation of this ilk, it's going to be very difficult for anyone to get those powers removed, and they can be handed over to any new government that comes in. Also, I do not trust this Tory government or any government to decide what crosses the line when it comes to speech. I don't know if you remember in 2016, have you ever heard the expression "get in the sea"? Iram, have you ever been told to get in the sea? Have you ever told someone to get in the sea?
Actually, no, I haven't.
So it's become somewhat of a meme. I think it may have been a social media account that started it. It's basically, if you're frustrated with something and you don't think something's good, or you just want to vent your disapproval, that's something you say, "get in the sea." Or, the entire city of Liverpool can get in the sea. Something like that. I used to say "get in the bin" to people, like, "oh, get in the bin." That film's not very good. It can get in the sea kind of attitude. Now, in 2016, a student was investigated for a death threat after telling an MP to get in the sea on Twitter.
Oh my God.
But, I mean, it's not even if somebody saw it and reported it on the MP's behalf. The MP saw it and said that's a death threat. First of all, even if you're not familiar with the expression and that it's a jokey term of just general disapproval, how is get in the sea a death threat on any level? It's insane to me, but that's the kind of thing we'll get from our MPs if these powers are enforced. And that'll soon become conflated with strong criticism, ridicule, mocking, even sometimes anger, insults, for instance. That's all accept. I mean, if you want to insult people on Twitter, you're a bit of a dick, but I don't think you should be arrested for it. And that's going to be conflated, and that's going to be the world we live in now, where you're scared of saying what you think to MPs because the old state could come down and knock on your door. So I don't know if this will happen. I've got a feeling they'll dial it back. I think they'll do something that doesn't mean much of anything, because death threats, if I'm right, are already illegal, aren't they?
Oh, and see, here's the thing, that we don't need more laws. We just need to enforce the ones that are already there and properly, not going out arresting, morons on Twitter who've just said something a bit stupid.
That's
those people, that is true. Like 80% of Twitter will be gone otherwise, So instead of wasting valuable time arresting idiots online, why are you going for act? I mean, look at the likes of Anjem Chowdhury just got away with his bile for years. I mean, I know he was very careful because he was a lawyer, so he's very careful to stay on the legal side of things. But then you get videos put up by actual extremists that never get taken down. It's just there's no consistency. If
this government puts through the online harm bill, they can get in the sea, as far as I'm concerned. But it might be worth pivoting to Netflix is in hot water now. There's always this question on the back of my mind, is there a corporation or a media outlet that's too big to cancel? Will there ever be a big corporate entity with a reputation to protect that will just say fuck off when the online mob comes to them? And I thought for a moment Netflix may have been it, but things have escalated, and so it might be worth starting at the beginning of this entire affair, which is the amazing American comedian Dave Chappelle. Are you familiar with Dave Chappelle and his work?
I am. I can't say I've watched that much of his stuff like you may have, but I am familiar with Dave Chappelle.
I think he's great, and he does something. I mean, he tells jokes, but he's also a storyteller. It's a weird sort of performance sometimes from him. He can do an hour without telling a joke, but you kind of hooked and invested in wherever he's going with it. He's just somebody you want to listen to. And I don't always agree with him. I mean, in his new Netflix special, which is the centre of the controversy, which we get on, so he leans into identity politics himself whilst sort of decrying cancel culture. I can take it or leave it if a joke doesn't hit or I find it personally directed at me. I'm not a little bitch, so I'm not going to spend my entire existence screaming about it online or turning up to the HQ of Netflix. I mean, you know what it, right? There's two things that makes crowds insane at the minute. Now, it's either, right. and this gives you some idea as to the shared type of mentality here. It's either Mohammed cartoons or someone said the wrong thing about transgender people. They're the two things that will create angry crowds quicker than any transgression in the West at the minute. And it's hilarious to me. So, long story short, Dave Chappelle's got a new special on Netflix. Well worth your time. Very funny. He attacks everyone on there. I mean, white people are probably the biggest punching bag. And again, I can take it because I'm not a little bitch. But... he does.
And you don't feel attacked as a white person?
No.
You don't think he's calling for your race to be exterminated?
I don't mind jokes about white people. My stipulation on jokes about white people is that they're funny. You know, even if what he's saying, even if I don't think it's particularly true, if it's funny, it gets a tick because he's a comedian and I want him to be funny. That's all I ask.
That's usually a requirement in a comedian.
I don't know. Have you seen Michael McIntyre? That was cruel. That was unfair. That was an easy target.
And just attacked another white man.
Well, this is the thing. Dave Chappelle just so happens to be black as well. He's not getting any points on the intersectional scale. That counts for nothing if you have the wrong opinions.
He's not. It seems that if you say something about trans people or trans activism, your skin colour ain't going to save you in this one. You can't play the black card now. You're under fire.
Like I was saying, my prerequisite for comedy is that it's funny. However, I do tend to gravitate towards comedians who do have something interesting socially to say, who will pick at little taboos and uncomfortable truths. That really does a lot for me, and I think it's brave. I think if you can find a way in to, you know, society and all our hang-ups and the elephant in the room, if you can do that with humour, that's amazing to me. And that's what Chappelle does. That's what people like Ricky Gervais do. That's what Chris Rock does. That's what Louis C.K. did before he started doing other things, which we won't mention.
Mm-hmm. So have you actually watched Dave Chappelle's latest show where he's supposed to have made these controversial? Yes. What did he actually say then? Because no one's reporting it.
That's the thing, because it's not really just jokes he tells in monologues about the issue, and he has taken pot shots at LGBTQI, you know, just the excesses of some of that community, the activism. I think on his other special, I mean, he was talking about how he supports the rights of trans people to be trans, but to what extent does he have to play a part in their self-identity? And I think that's a fair question. It's a case of, okay, you do what you want with your life, but to what extent do you expect or demand me to affirm your identity? And that's the debate we're having at the minute, unfortunately. If you look at what he's doing, he always seems to be going for the unreasonable people within certain groups. And if you can't do that, then what's the point? He's not out there wishing harm or hoping to remove any rights from anyone. He's touching on something that is fair game. It's very fast become one of the most huge and divisive political issues of our time. It is everywhere you look. Of course, a comedian, a brave comedian rather, is going to take shots at it. So I can't really pinpoint anything. There was jokes about, you know, maybe appearances of trans people not passing, things like, you know, pretty, you know, low hanging fruit. There was nothing hateful or particular, you know, bigoted that I could see. I mean, I enjoyed it because I thought it was brave. He's instigating a debate, discussion, but some people didn't see it that way. Now, I don't know how many is a lot, actually. I don't think I can put a number on it, but a number of employees at Netflix, I mean, there was a report that some of them stormed a board meeting to protest about it, and they got fired. Now, the reports were they were fired, you know, for voicing their, you know, reasonable concerns about Dave Chappelle's special. No, they like fucking gate crashed a high-level meeting at Netflix. That's pretty much grounds for dismissal, isn't it? Straight away.
It is.
I couldn't do that at my place of employment.
At work, I'd pretty much, you know, have my arse handed to me. I mean,
it's gross misconduct.
I'd only storm a board meeting just to nick some like free pastry or coffee or something.
There you go.
To be honest with you. But yeah.
So there was that incident. Then employees and anyone else, I suppose, arranged a protest outside the HQ in America of Netflix, and they were all there screaming and shouting various hair colours, obs, and
nose rings.
What was hilarious about this? A couple of men turned up, American men. I think they're YouTube personalities, but certainly one of them is, and they had a stick with a sign on, and it just said something like, "Jokes are funny. Dave is good."
Oh my god, what monsters!
I like Dave, or something like that. so benign, and that's what's hilarious about it. It's the most inoffensive slogans you can think of, and they turned up and they were just chanting, "Jokes are funny, jokes are funny," which I think that's a fair comment. So that was funny to see until something really weird happened. So this gentleman with his sign saying jokes are funny, somebody in the crowd wrestled the sign off him, ripped the card sign portion off the top and stamped on it on the floor. And this man who was previously holding a full sign was now only holding the stick portion. And the man who had just destroyed it, seconds after doing so, started shouting in this crowd, "He's got a weapon, he's got a weapon."
Oh my God. You just made the weapon.
I mean,
there's only so much
a
stupidity
psychopath
I can handle. Like, yeah.
Now, this guy deserves a medal because people, got into his space, because they thought he had a weapon. They was trying to stop him from moving, and which was funny because someone took a snapshot of that and a news article printed the photo with the caption that he was pushing and shoving activists. He did nothing of the sort when you watch the video. It's shades of Covington all over again. So he drops the stick. He goes, "Oh, you want me to drop my weapon?" And they said yes. So he dropped the stick, and there's some woman comes at him with a tambourine, starts playing it in his face, shouting, "Repent, motherfucker, repent." Now that pretty much tells you everything you need to know about this. Oh, and one quick point. The plot thickens. The guy who destroyed his sign and shouted, "He's got a weapon," turns out to be a writer for Netflix.
Plot thickens.
You have to say, though, in America, in the climate, in the context of a large crowd where police might be present, shouting, "He's got a weapon, he's got a weapon," that man who did that can't possibly be unaware that, one, he was lying, and two, that could have endangered his life.
I mean, all this has done is just made me want to watch Dave Chappelle, to be honest with you, because I want to see what the controversy is all about. And I suspect that's what it's done for a lot of other people. It's boosted the ratings and the desire to watch the show. But this whole trans debate always gets very, very toxic. And you said it's one of the most, divisive subjects of our time. I mean, at the moment, we've got an ongoing issue with a University Professor Kathleen Stock, who's been dubbed a transphobe. She teaches at the University of Sussex, and again, all she did was point out how biology is a reality and a fact. Shock. And for that, she's just been dubbed a transphobe. And all these students are trying to hound her out of her job. She's not had any support from her own trade union. I mean, what the hell is the point of being a part of a trade union when they're not going to take your side in something?
Oh, yeah, they released a statement in almost, I don't think they mentioned her by name, but they at the same time they released a statement about the importance of tackling transphobia, didn't they? That was unbelievable.
Yeah, and the Sussex police advised her to hire bodyguards and install CCTV at home in case she's attacked. I mean, how has it come to this point where you have a university professor scared for their life, and simply for saying something that was quite obvious? She wasn't denigrating trans people at all. She does believe that they should be treated with respect, like any other people in society. But respecting transgender people shouldn't come at the expense of women, and a lot of women are feeling like that's what it's come to now, that it's women's spaces or women's identities that are being destroyed, and it's not men's identity that's being destroyed. Men don't seem to be too bothered about this because it's not impacting them, it's not impacting their spaces, whereas women have fought for centuries.
I think you mean menstruators.
Bodies with vaginas. Oh God. So we bodies with vaginas have been fighting for a long time for our basic rights and spaces. And it seems like that's being taken away from us, all in the name of equality, and for making a very, very tiny, tiny part of the population feel included. And if you say anything about that, if you say anything to suggest, to voice your concern, then you're insulted, you're hounded, you're cancelled. That's happened to Kathleen Stock, J.K. Rowling, who again, she suggested there were real biological differences between men and women.
Oh, Dave Chappelle, sorry to interrupt. Dave Chappelle defends J.K. Rowling on his special. That's another thing that probably...
Yeah, that also cancels him. Yeah, I mean, that makes him a monster. And, you're seeing this debate now everywhere. I mean, what happened recently, I don't know if you've heard this, and I've not got round to it yet, but Stephen Nolan from the BBC has done a 10-part podcast series called Nolan Investigates Stonewall, and he's exposing why so many public bodies are uncritically embracing the trans lobby. It's not even trans people, it's not even like all trans people, it's a certain lobby which makes it even more of a minority within a minority within a minority. So he's done this superb podcast series which I really need to get round to listening to.
I've listened to it.
Oh, right, okay, so it's supposed to offer an insight into how Stonewall operates and why it's able to gain such power. So what did you make of it, and what did you think were the lessons?
It's a good piece of work. So it's 10 episodes. The episodes range from like 40 to 50 minutes, so it's a big slog. I've not actually finished the 10th episode. I'm like a quarter of a way through it. What's interesting about Stonewall is that they're a lobbying group, which is fine. Lobby groups exist. The problem is the government is paying them to lobby the government, it seems. Now, I don't know if when the Equality Act was brought in a while back and about, treating people who are gay the same in the workplace, discrimination should be opposed, etc., should be illegal. I agree with that. It sounds like the most sane, rational way to proceed in life, to treat everybody equally under the law. However, a lot of companies were sort of panicking, like, how do we ensure we meet this? Because what it did, this Equality Act, it opened up whole workplaces to potential legal action from their employees who are just sick to the back teeth of being treated differently because they're gay or because they're a woman, etc. So how do these companies get a clean bill of health? Well, what they do is they appeal to the experts. Stonewall, for instance. Stonewall offer themselves up. They have something, I forgot the name of it, something like a Stonewall index, where they say, we will rate your organisation on a scale. We will say how healthy you are in terms of pro-LGBT, whatever rights. And where you're falling short, we'll recommend some courses you can go on to help increase that score. By the way, these courses are £600 a go, and we'll provide them for you. So you're opting into Stonewall's league table, as it were, and it's conflict of interest. It's in Stonewall's interest to mark you down so that then you pay for courses to get a better score. And now all these employees can tick a box and say, we're LGBT friendly, we've got a Stonewall score of what have you. And then companies that aren't on this index get highlighted as the bigots. Why aren't you doing this? Where's your Stonewall rating, etc.? And they're pushing the BBC were referring to them completely unquestioned.
But it's not just the BBC, it's public bodies. So even I think the Home Office as well. So
yes.
And they're all funded by taxpayers. So you've got, if it's a private organisation, there's very little you can do. But if it's a taxpayer-funded body, we have the right to know exactly where their money is, or where our money is going, and who's consulting them. Yeah,
and basically we're taking Stonewall's instructions verbatim, unquestioned, and in fact it looks like on occasion Stonewall have actually misinterpreted some equality laws. They've sort of overreached in what they've said is illegal, etc. The Stonewall, to be clearer, there's an unlimited amount of genders, and gender identity should be protected under the law. And I'm not quite sure that's what the law says. I think they are trying to push self-ID in that direction, but it's not actually a thing at the moment. Stonewall seems to claim that it is in some contexts. So, a lot of companies are operating under bad information and bad ideology at the behest of Stonewall. And it's just very strange. I think we're going to see a lot of people now this expose's come out slowly distancing themselves because they're an activist organisation. You have, gay people abandoning ship left, right and centre because Stonewall, since about 2014, has become the trans charity. And it's just weird how that's happened.
It is, and that's why you have the sort of LGB Alliance now. And Jan Skelton on Twitter was asking if Tunnock's tea cakes is deemed transphobic now. And at first I didn't get why. And then she said it's because they donated some of their tea cakes to the LGB Alliance conference last Thursday. And now trans activists are trying to get people to boycott them. And I have to say, I absolutely love the tea cakes that they make. They are absolutely lush, so I will be buying some, purely for solidarity reasons, of course.
Yeah, that's the LGB Alliance. Like they seem to be against gender ideology, and they seem to want to exclusively talk about the rights of gay people, which is their right, but because of that, they've automatically been decried as bigots. I think Matt Lucas, the comedian in Britain, publicly described them as transphobic on Twitter the other week. It was really funny though. I think they had a conference not so long ago, within the last 2 weeks, and they invited the Prime Minister to attend, and they sent this request into his PA, and they got an official response from Number 10.
I know,
Did you see it? And it wasn't by Boris, but it was basically saying, Boris thanks you for all the hard work you're doing for gay rights, etc. And they tweeted this out, and everyone's gone absolutely apeshit. Like the Tories supporting a hate group. It annoyed all the right people. So,
how has it got to the point where the Tories are the party for gay rights? I think, was it Keir Starmer who just couldn't, Labour leader Keir Starmer couldn't defend his own MP who said only women have cervixes. I think this was in response to something about, something in response to smear tests or cancer or something like that. And I think Rosie Duffield said only women have cervixes. And, it's just everyone was going out their way to not acknowledge that, yes, only women have cervixes. The whole thing is like the Emperor's got clothes. Everyone can see it for what it is, but we just have to keep up this charade. I just wonder how far it's going to go. And maybe this whole Stephen Nolan podcast thing on Stonewall, maybe that's going to be the thing that finally tips us over the edge. I don't know.
It's really funny. The theme throughout the Nolan investigation for the BBC. So this was carried out by the BBC, also investigating the BBC. A lot of American listeners might be confused by this. It'd be like, CNN investigating themselves would never happen, but the BBC's got to remain impartial. So if a BBC journalist wants to expose some wrongdoing at the BBC, it's actually part of their remit to do it. They host shows that are critical of their own output, under the guise of balance, I suppose. So what was notable about this investigation, that every time, and this wasn't just carried out in a couple of weeks, it's months and months in the making, they've been putting this together. Every time they tried to get an official representative from Stonewall to speak to them, or the Home Office, or any of the... So even Ofcom, the person who regulates the media, was taking the lead of Stonewall. No one from Ofcom would speak to them. Nobody from the BBC would speak to them. So the BBC are investigating the BBC about their links to Stonewall, and the relevant departments and people would not speak to the BBC about the BBC. And that just blows my mind, really, that these people, when push comes to shove, are unwilling to defend the things they try and get put in systemically. And you can't say, well, it's just a far-right rag, rabble-rousing, I'm not speaking to them, it's a nobody, it's trouble-causing. It's the BBC wishing to speak to the BBC. So if you won't speak to the BBC about your beliefs and the things you're trying to make the rest of us adhere to, who are you going to speak to? Something interesting really about Stonewall in general is you'd think like a lobby group would be a group that would want exposure and want to be seen pushing their message all the time. They're actually very covert. They like to affect change in the background. They carry out a lot of meetings with senior politicians, corporate leaders, and they say nothing about it. They make their recommendations, they push their narratives behind closed doors because they're solely focused on affecting change. And to be fair to them, that's very effective in what they're doing. But, it's very covert and we're not hearing the details because nobody will speak about it.
It's just, I really, really, I seriously hope this leads to a turning point. Maybe it won't, but I really hope it does, because I think most people are against this idea of, just being able to randomly self-identify as whatever gender you want, and they're very, we like the fact that we have separate spaces for men and women, and all this, since the Sarah Everard death, the woman who was murdered by the police officer, we keep talking about women's safety and how unsafe women are, and how women are murdered quite often by men, and mostly by men they know. That just reinforces to me how important biology is.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what century we're living in, biology still matters. It shapes everything in your life. Your genes can even determine how bloody healthy you are and how fit you can get, etc., etc. We can't. How can we just deny all that reality? You even had Professor Robert Winston on Question Time who said sex is a reality, biology is a reality, and he even had to start with the caveat, I may get cancelled for saying something like this on your show. Just goes to show you how ludicrous this has become.
What was amazing? Who is it that hosts that now? Is it Fiona Bruce?
It's Fiona Bruce.
So Fiona Bruce hosts Question Times now, and what was really funny about that, when that scientist said, I'm going to say something now that you may wish to edit, so he thought, he's right. We live in a climate now where it's controversial to say you can't change your biological sex, which is what he said. That was his claim. You can't change your biological sex. Now, that is a fact as the day is long. And everybody panicked when he said it, to the point where Fiona Bruce felt it necessary to challenge it in terms of, providing balance. She didn't go too hard, but she said, I need to tell you that there's lots of people that disagree with you about that. Now, can you imagine if he'd have said, I need to tell you honestly, and you may wish to edit the show at this, but the earth is not flat. Do you think she would have felt the necessity to say, well, there's a lot of people that disagree with you about that?
Exactly. Exactly.
Gender ideologues are gender flat earthers in the context of science. These people have ideology. If you have an adult skeleton, the first thing anthropologists can tell you about it is whether or not it's male or female to a high degree of certainty. That's just on site. Nothing else, just the skeleton. They can say, this was a male, this is a female. And they can do it they're so accurate with their estimations just by eyeballing it, right? Now, I read something, I can't remember where I read it. I can't remember if it was an article or, let's treat it as an anecdote, but somebody had said that a couple of thousands of years old remains of somebody in one of his classes in college, it said, well, that's a male, and the professor told him off and said, you can't say that, and he said, why? And he said, well, he may have been transgender, or they may have been transgender.
Oh, fuck off.
So we're talking about 1,000-year-old skeletons now, and somebody in a class can't say that's a male skeleton, because the professor's like, whoa, hold your horses there. This person thousands of years ago may have been transgender, so you shouldn't jump to conclusions. Fuck me.
This whole thing would be funny if it wasn't scary.
People don't see that you can still hold science in one hand and confirm the truth of it and not lie about scientific reality, and in the other hand you can hold individual rights, and they do not need to conflict unless you try and push one in the direction of the other. Now, I don't need to do
these
that.
Are the same. I bet these are the same people, the ones who don't like to say skeleton is male or female. I bet they're the same ones who believe in the science when it comes to climate change, but deny science when it comes to fucking biology. I mean, what an absolute joke.
There's nothing more scientifically certain. Like, I can't think of any other field where it's so observed and factual to say that male and female sex is binary, and you can't change it. Does that mean somebody can't live as the opposite sex? No. Should that be protected by law? Yes. Should they be discriminated against, treated as second-class citizens? No. I consider anyone who behaved in that manner an enemy. But I don't have to pretend things are true when they're not in order for somebody to live their ideal life. It's very similar. I always make this comparison, and I know it's not exactly the same, but it's in the ballpark. I'm not religious. I don't know if you know that about me. I'm not religious. I don't believe in souls.
You've kept that one quiet.
Yeah, I kept that one close to my chest. I don't believe in souls, right? A lot of people do, and it's very important to them. It's at the core of their identity. They think this world is a fight for that soul. It's the only thing that matters. And whether that soul goes to paradise or goes to heaven or faces eternal damnation is important to them. That's like them stakes, if you believe that to be true. Though I can't think of any higher stakes if you believe that to be true. I don't. Now, if I say to somebody, I don't believe you've got a soul, is that a hate crime? Am I erasing their identity? It's like trying to say or mandate in law that I have to accept that people have souls. And if we were to do that, that wouldn't be a right. That'd be religious privilege. And that's what these people are asking for. They're asking for religious privilege. They want their worldview
absolutely
protected by law.
Did you see, in response to this whole debate, Douglas Murray tweeted out, chromosomes in bio?
Oh, that was hilarious. That was really good. Did you want to talk about anything else to stop me ranting for 5 minutes?
Well, maybe you can just very quickly go into the James Bond.
James Bond. Oh my God. So
James Bond. I've never really watched many Bond movies. It's not my cup of tea, but I've sort of dipped in and out over the years, mostly because I used to fancy Sean Connery. I thought he was the ultimate Bond. Yep, he is dead. A vile person in reality, though, apparently. But
did you ever see that video when he's talking about slapping his wife?
Bond. So in that regards, yeah, that side. Yeah, he was the best.
It's like really on the nose.
So bad.
She won't let it go. She wants the last word.
Yeah, he was the ultimate Bond for me. And it's always been a bit of glamour, car chases, fights, sexy women, blah blah blah. I went to watch this purely because there wasn't really anything else on in the cinema.
Talking about No Time to Die here, with Daniel Craig.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yes. Don't know about you, but it was alright. I didn't like the soppy romantic Bond, who's all monogamous and spoiler alert, by the way, so don't listen if you haven't seen it, has a child now. That wasn't doing it for me, I'm afraid. It just felt more like a Bollywood movie, to be honest with you. You know, he's all for his heroine, and I'm not feeling that, James, sorry. And then they had to make a woman 007 as well, which is so right on. Although I did like her wardrobe a few times, so I'm not going to fault her entirely. So it's all right. It's all right.
I think that was all right. So I was left feeling empty about the film. I'm not a massive Bond fan of the new ones with Daniel Craig. This will give you an idea of what my Bond credentials are like. I used to love Moonraker, Roger Moore. That was my favourite Bond. There's this amazing sequence at the beginning when he jumps out of a plane without a parachute, and it's real stuntmen up in the sky to get the footage. And I just used to, when I was a kid watching that, I was amazed. But of the Daniel Craig movies, I loved Casino Royale. I didn't care for any of the others apart from Skyfall. Thought that was brilliant. This one, so it's funny because I'm anti-woke. I hate all this pandering, all this forced diversity. People assume diversity is a substitute for story or character, and it's not. There's nothing wrong with diversity as long as it's organic and you have, good writing, good characters, sure. But there's a thing about anti-wokeness now I've noticed just tipping into cynicism. So when this black woman was announced as an agent in Bond, as a cast member, and she were, it kind of leaked that she was playing 007. There was all these anti-woke people going mental, saying, "Oh, they're going to make Bond's going to be a black woman going forward. They're replacing him. Oh, how woke! It's a woman and she's black," and all these things. So a lot of people feared the worst. I reserved judgment because I thought, what, I'll see the film first, like a rational person, and I thought that stuff was okay. I don't think it went. There was this big concern that Bond's last outing was going woke because they had what's her face from Fleabag coming in doing the writing. Phoebe Waller something. There was reports.
Waller-Bridge, yeah.
That's the one. There was reports that she'd come in to do some of the writing and write for the female characters and bring it up to date and all these things. So on the face of it, it looked concerning, but I didn't think there was an issue there. I don't know about you. Did you think? I think I agree with the things you were talking about in the characterization of Bond and what have you, but I don't think that film went particularly woke. What do you think?
I didn't think it was woke exactly, but it didn't quite do it for me, is all I'm going to say. I didn't really like the villain. I mean, I know Rami Malek's a good actor, but I just thought I didn't get the point of the villain. Just some little loser who liked gardening. I didn't really get it.
Alan Titchmarsh was the what's funny about that though? You might be onto something there, because you might be onto something there. Because I, like you, was left scratching my head. Saying, what's this guy about? Why is he doing what he's doing? And I don't know if you remember a while back, while they were trying to tap Rami Malek for that role, there were some reports that he'd agreed to the role but made some stipulations. Now, this could be conjecture because it's, tabloid Hollywood reporting, but apparently some of those stipulations were that his villain couldn't be ideologically motivated, certainly not religiously motivated. He wanted to make him sort of apolitical and he didn't want religions portrayed in a bad light or political ideology. So you had this sort of vapid, directionless sort of villain.
But then it doesn't work.
Yeah.
You just don't know why he's doing what he's doing. He has to have a motive. Okay, fine. He didn't have to be some sort of king hook-handed, Islamist nutter. Fine.
I'd
it doesn't have to be. Yeah, actually, that would make it more exciting. But no, okay, fine. You don't want to make him a Muslim terrorist. Fine. But, I just didn't get him at all. I was like, why? Oh, God. Oh, he's just going to kill people by, just like, putting something in their tea and make them eat this like weird flour shit. Oh my God, what a boring villain. And he likes Japanese tea ceremonies.
Do you think it's worth taking a few questions? Have you got time?
Yeah.
So Steve Everts is I don't know if you know him, he's a Manc actor. Been in some
is he?
Movies, yeah.
Oh, there he is.
He was in that excellent film Looking for Eric. 2009, but he's
we know another famous person.
Yeah, he's fun on Twitter, but he's asked a fantastic question for this week's episode. He's asked, do we shit in heaven? He's put, damn, Nicky Campbell beat me to it. You have to watch the Nicky Campbell interview to get that reference. It's a blinder. What else have we got? We've covered Jan Skelton's question on tea cakes. Oh,
Steve Critical said he sent one a few weeks ago, but
send it again, you lazy twat. Do you want me to go through a week of your Jesus Christ, Steve?
Fuck's sake, you don't think we have things to do?
Unbelievable.
God.
Right, Adrian Camilleri has asked, does shouting he has a weapon at someone holding a pole that was recently attached to a sign after the sign was forcibly ripped away constitute yelling fire in a crowded theatre? Meaning, was it a clear attempt to include a riot or something far worse? I think he means incite there. Induce, he means. He corrects himself later. I think we covered that, haven't we?
We have, yeah. See, our listeners know us really well. Not the lazy ass ones. I'm looking at you, Steve.
Steve, Jesus fucking Christ, Steve. Was Dave... Oh, so Mr. Colossus has asked, was Dave Chappelle actually even transphobic or just that he wasn't deferential and reverent? See, we've covered that as well. Yeah, our audience do, apart from fucking Steve. Everyone seems to knows really well. I think that's it, isn't it? I think we've done it.
I think that's it.
So, since you hated Bond, I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you for a good film recommendation for people before you go.
Oh my God.
Can't be any of that Bollywood shit.
Do you know what? I've not watched a movie in ages.
I missed the cinema. They're all going to bottleneck. It's like May next year, there's going to be 7,000 films out that have been postponed due to the pandemic.
I'm trying to think of a movie that I've seen, but the problem is I've actually watched a lot of more old movies, to be honest with you. So I wouldn't really know what to recommend. You really have put me on the spot. Okay, well, I watched a few months ago Citizen Kane.
Oh, Rosebud.
And yes, it was an interesting movie. Not one of my ultimate favourites, but I really liked it because it sort of goes into the power that the press used to have. The glory days of when the press barons really did rule. And it's black and white as well, and I absolutely love black and white movies. So, if you really want to watch a classic, there you go.
Yeah, we studied
go on, Michael. Watch it.
There's that opening shot where the camera sort of pushes through the gate of like the cemetery, if I remember, and camera work like that hadn't been seen before. Apparently audiences were like, wow, that's incredible. Some sort of like crane shot. That's something we studied at. This is how exciting film school was, rewinding the opening scene of Citizen Kane to study a crane shot.
Oh yes, the crane shot.
The crane shot. Well, I think we've nailed it. Hashtag crane shot if you made it this far. Jesus. So I don't cut out the last half an hour of this and we just waffle about films. Iram, it has been an absolute pleasure, as usual. Speak to you next time.
Until then.
Bye, and fuck you, Steve.